Thank you for listening to Crossroads Community Church. At Crossroads, our mission is to be the church by exalting the glory of God, sharing and showing the love of Christ, and inviting others to be recipients of Christ's love. Now here's this week's message.
All right, as you are making your way back to your seats and getting situated, we're going to continue our discussion that we've been having about day-to-day struggles in the workplace, in school, financial struggles, which we're going to hit on those in detail next week. Family struggles, personal struggles, issues, baggage, whatever you want to call it, strongholds, all of that stuff. And we said our goal in this series is that we end up with a brand new attitude and a brand new plan to overcome all of our old struggles. And if you've missed any of these, they're on our website. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but definitely go online and download them. Hopefully they've been helpful to you, and I've heard some feedback from some people that, yeah, they're great, and there's people that they want to share them with, but they're not here, so go online, download them, or tell them where they can go online and download them and watch them, especially last week's, because last week we said, if you were here when Rob shared his testimony, that all of us have something in common. Christians, non-Christians, Republican, Democrat, old, young, it doesn't matter what stage in life, what age in life, whether you're, no matter what your political persuasion or your financial situation, we all have issues. Everybody has issues. We may have different types of issues, but everybody has issues. You can call them trials, tribulations, strongholds, addictions, bad habits, whatever you want to call them. But we all have issues. But we all also have a God who is available to help us overcome our issues. All right, so let me ask this. You know who really, and it's good that there are not a lot of teenagers or young adults here today, because we're going to talk about them, because they have lots and lots of issues. Yeah, I was hoping they do. The youth today, I mean, not just youth, young adults, all of them, they have issues, but especially youth, especially the teenage years, especially the younger crowd, because they have, think about this, if we all have issues, and we talked about, men have issues and women have issues. When they come together in a family unit, they have issues, and if those aren't resolved, your teenagers, your kids, they know that. They carry that stuff into school, where they're sitting in front of a teacher, and I'm not trying to down teachers. Teachers go through a lot. They do a lot, but teachers are human, and if they're male or female or married, they have issues that they're bringing with them if they're not getting resolved. And your youth are dealing with, not just the issues at home, but the issues at school, and then the issues that all of their friends are bringing from their family units, and whatever the culture says that they're supposed to be. You got to be like this, you got to be like that, you got to be like this. And so they're dealing with all that stuff, and all they really want is like food and not to be bored. That's pretty much all they want, but they're getting exposed to all this kind of stuff. So here's the thing I want to do this morning. I want to look at one particular youth, young adult, who had similar issues in his life. And here's what I want us to see. We're going to look at the issues that he had, and they may be a little bit extreme, but as we're going to look at, they're not too far off from what youth are facing today. We're going to look at how God intervened in his life, how God stepped in and said, hey, I know you have issues, but God was there for him. And then the life transformation. Once God helped him through those issues and he's on the other side, what was his life like? How did he live his life? All right. So we're going to do something a little different this morning. How many of you guys are familiar with Joseph from the Old Testament? Joseph, Abraham was the father of Isaac. Isaac was the father of Jacob. Jacob had 12 sons. His 11th son was named Joseph. All right. So now here's the deal. Joseph, 11 of 12 sons, right, came from a blended family. I mean, this was like the first sister wives situation, literally, because his father, Jacob, was married to two sisters and had children through both, but also through their handmaidens. So this was like Duggars to the extreme with a sister wives mix and a little bit of the real world thrown in. And he had 12 sons, overall, so this blended family that Joseph came from. And he had, well, let me do this. Let me compare him to your teen or young adult who may or may not come from a blended family, probably thinks that his family is not normal, although you know that it is. He looks and say, he or she is looking and saying that this is this is crazy. I'm not in a normal family, because your family has issues, just like every family has issues. But that youth or young adult doesn't know that every family has issues, and that, for lack of a better term, crazy is the new normal, and that there's a little bit of crazy in everybody's family, and that he's not alone, right? And again, all they want really is to not be bored and to have some food. Now, here's the thing. What I want to do is compare Joseph to your teen and your young adult. Now, granted, we're not talking gadgetry, electronic-wise, waiting at the school bus, all that kind of stuff. But just in some of the family dynamics and issues that may or may not happen in your family, but definitely happened in his family. So Joseph had a dream, all right, that he was going to be superior to his parents. All right, he had a dream. Now, the dream that he had came from God, that, hey, there's going to be, and it was in a vision that didn't make sense to him. It's not like God said, here, you're going to be at a podium and your family are going to be bowing down to you. He showed it through stars and the sun and moon and all this stuff. And Joseph walked away and, goes and tells his brothers, hey, I'm going to rule and reign over you guys someday. I'm going to be in charge of all of you someday. And they got a little bit upset, which is normal, because if you have more than one child, any of you who have more than one child ever seen them disagree, argue, fight, headlock, yada, yada, yada? I mean, insert whatever there. It happens. But when there's 11 or 12 of them running around of varying ages, of course there's going to be some animosity. Now, to Jacob's, I don't want to say credit, but the Bible says that he had a little bit more favor and love for Joseph, which is a little bit understandable because, long story short, he was in love with Rachel, but he worked 7 years at her father's request in order to marry her, and instead he was given her sister, Leah, and then had to work another 7 years to get Rachel. Rachel was the one he loved. He took the other ones, but then Rachel couldn't have kids. So when Rachel, the one he loved, finally had a kid, most theologians say, well, that's why he had so much favor for Joseph, because it was from the wife who he actually loved. Now, nobody put a gun to his head and said, sleep with all these other women, but he's a guy. What are you going to do? All right, but so he had a little bit of favor for Joseph, and Joseph had this dream, and he shared it. And obviously, again, if everyone has issues and families have issues, this kind of got blown up over time. And it built a lot of animosity, as you can imagine, amongst his brothers. And this is what happened. I'm going to put the verses up here on the screen. In Genesis chapter 37, and this is the Message version, it says, they spotted him off in the distance. Now, his brothers were out working in the field and doing farm work and all that kind of stuff. And his father said, hey, go check on them. They may be slacking off. Just go see what they're doing. Make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And Joseph went to go check on them. And they spotted him off in the distance, and by the time he got to them, they had cooked up a plot to kill him. Now, it's one thing when you walk into the living room and you see your kids arguing, and you yell, stop it, and then you go back into the kitchen, and you come back, and somebody's in the headlock, somebody's getting smacked with a pillow. It's another thing when someone is one is literally trying to kill the other. And this is the level of anger and frustration. This is why I said before, if families have issues, if we don't deal with them, then someone else has to deal with us. Because his brothers were so angry and so frustrated that they had cooked up a plot to kill him, and the brothers were saying, here comes the dreamer. It wasn't just your normal family stuff. It was the dreams that he kept telling them, saying, I'm going to be bigger than you guys. I'm going to be better than you guys. I'm going to be over you guys, and you guys are going to be subordinate to me. They said, let's kill him and throw him into one of these old cisterns. We can say that a vicious animal ate him up. We'll see what his dreams amount to. Reuben, who was the oldest, heard the brothers talking and intervened to save him. We're not going to kill him. No murder. Go ahead and throw him in the cistern out there in the wild, but don't hurt him. Reuben planned to go back later and get him out and take him back to his father. When Joseph reached his brothers, now he's coming off in the distance and they're plotting this. Let's do this to him. Let's do that to him. And when Joseph reached his brothers, they ripped off the fancy coat he was wearing, grabbed him, and threw him into a cistern. The cistern was dry. There wasn't any water in it. And the cistern was basically a well. And they threw him in there with the intent of holding him there and trying to figure out what to do with him. Now, in our minds, we don't have a lot of wells around, so we can't picture it. And when we see on the news that, I think it was years ago, the last time I saw that someone had fallen into a well and there were rescue workers trying to get him out, and they're long and they're deep and all this kind of stuff. But in our minds, it's hard to picture a family rivalry getting to the vicious and malicious point where it's not that I'm going to shun you and you're cut off. It's not that I'm going to delete you from my Facebook page. It's that I'm going to take your life. And it's not someone, at work saying it. It's not someone you don't know coming in and saying it. It is someone who you spent your life with saying, I hate you so much, I want to take your life. And it's difficult for us to get a picture of this. So take a look at this. Now, think about this. Think about your teenager or your smaller child or your young adult. And think about the fact, have they ever maybe come to you and said, hey, I had this wild dream. Maybe it's not something God gave them, but maybe it's their hopes and their dreams of what they want to do. And granted, in Joseph's situation, he had a dream that God gave him that he was like, I don't know what this means, but this is where I'm going. But for our teens, our young adults, they have hopes and dreams, and they may sound crazy, but here's the thing. The moment they step out of your house, they're going to face a world that wants nothing more than to crush their hopes and their dreams. And to tell them, you can never be this, or you can never accomplish this, or you come from this area, so you're never going to get to here, or you come from this background, so you'll never make it anywhere. And we are the only ones who can cheerlead their hopes and dreams, no matter how crazy they sound. When they say, hey, I want to be a rock star, a musician, that may not be what you want for them, But cheer them on. You can be whatever you want. Study, spend time doing it, practice. Hey, I want to be a movie star. I want to be a football player. I want to be a neurosurgeon. Most parents will sit there and that's never going to happen. I can't afford the college for you, whatever, blah, 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 blah. But what we need to do is say, hey, all things are possible with God. There is no reason on this planet why God cannot equip you and allow the resources to come into play that are needed for you to be whatever God is calling you to be, or whatever you're dreaming and hoping to be. We need to be their biggest cheerleaders, because once they leave the house, they have none. And we can say, yeah, they have friends that are going to cheer them on. That's for a moment, because those friends are going to leave, and they're still going to be with us. Now, I was talking to someone online, and they were talking about, children, and they said, hey, when you consider having kids, you need to plan that for, 18 years, they're going to be in your house. They're going to be your financial responsibility. And I responded, 18 years is the minimum. Because when they hit 20 and they're trying to figure out what they want and they don't want to go to college, where are they going to be? Your house. When they get in their 30s and they say, hey, I'm working and I'm doing what I want to do, but I'm saving money, where are they going to be? Your house. When they get older and, maybe they get let go from a job or whatever happens, where are they always going to be welcomed back into? Only place on the planet. Your house. So 18 is the minimum. And we need to, because I used to have the saying that, when my kids turned 18, they had 90 days to figure out what they want to do. They can get a job, they can go in the military, they can go to school. They just got to get out, which worked, but I didn't realize they keep coming back, which they're going to keep doing. And as long as you're their parent, which is never going to change, that's where they're going to go. All right, let me move on. All right, so now here's the thing. When we were growing up, depending on where you were, there may have been some parents who tried to, hey, you can't do this, you can't do that, you've got to focus on this, you've got to focus on that. That may have happened. But when we were growing up, we didn't face a lot of the things that our kids face today. There weren't people walking into our schools trying to kill us when we were growing up. Not only was it people that we know who might have walked into the school and tried to kill us, but people you don't know that don't even go to the school for whatever reason might walk in and try to kill us. We didn't have to face that, but that's what our kids are facing today. And again, as you've seen, not just high school, college, wherever they go. So that's why not only should we not crush their dreams, our kids need Jesus more than ever. More than we did in our generation, more than your parents or your grandparents did in their generation. Today, more than ever, the generation of youth and young adults and the ones coming after them and the ones coming after them, they need Jesus more than ever. All right, but let me finish this. So Joseph was sold into slavery. And your kids, and we tend to think that we're in a great community where it is unlikely that our kids are going to get sold into slavery, but that's not true, because millions of young adults and children all over the planet are being kidnapped and drugged and sold into slavery, and literally walking through, and I'm using this as an example, walking through, Century 3 Mall one Saturday night, and on Sunday morning wake up somewhere in Budapest, chained to a bed and drugged up. It happens everywhere. It is not impossible that it's happening here. And I know a lot of congregations in downtown Pittsburgh have been meeting and praying and talking about this, because they're starting to see that a lot of the kids that you see missing, and I know they don't put them on milk cartons anymore, but a lot of the kids that are going missing around in downtown aren't missing because they ran away. They're missing because someone snatched them away. And they're ending up in places where we're not going to find them. All right, so Let me go on. He's sold into slavery, and he ends up spending 11 years of his life as a slave, and then he ends up spending 2 years in prison, and this is what happens next. Genesis chapter 41. Pharaoh at once sent for Joseph because he was in prison. Pharaoh had a dream that no one could interpret. They brought him on the run from the jail cell. He cut his hair, put on clean clothes, and came to Pharaoh. I dreamed a dream, Pharaoh told Joseph. Nobody can interpret it. But I've heard that just by hearing a dream, you can interpret it. Joseph answered, not I, but God. God will set Pharaoh's mind at ease. And even though he had went through lots of trials, lots of tribulations, a lot of stuff that we wouldn't wish on our kids, beat to a pulp by your brothers, sold into slavery by your brothers, working in a house in a foreign country, then falsely accused and then thrown in prison, and there's absolutely no one to defend you or stand on your side, but he stayed faithful to God. And because he stayed faithful to God, God used him in a mighty and powerful way. And this is a phrase that we need to teach to our kids, because they're going to come back to you and say, hey, I didn't get the job I wanted, but God. I'm not doing as good as I thought in school. I'm failing out of school, but God. And maybe study. I didn't get, the relationship I wanted. I didn't get this. I didn't get that. So many things are going to happen to them, and we need to instill them that it's not over, because God's still on the throne. He's still sovereign over the affairs of men, and to put their faith and trust in God. All right, let me start wrapping this up. In Acts chapter 7, this is the way Luke summarizes what happened in Acts chapter 7, verses 9 to 10. But then those fathers, meaning the brothers of Joseph, burning up with jealousy, sent Joseph off to Egypt as a slave. God was right there with him, though he not only rescued him from all his troubles, but brought him to the attention of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. He was so impressed with Joseph that he put him in charge of the whole country, including his own personal affairs. So after he appeared before Pharaoh, God not only used him to interpret Pharaoh's dreams, but then God used him and put him in charge of the country that previously was responsible for imprisoning him. And even though he went through all those circumstances, he stayed faithful to God. And so God was faithful in using him. And most of our children and our teens and even our young adults, when they have issues, when they have stuff that they face, they respond to a situation. Someone didn't like me at school, I got to respond. Someone was bullying me online, I got to respond. I'm not doing good in this class, I got to respond. This didn't go well, that didn't go well. And so they're letting all of these circumstances in their life control their life. And what we need to impress upon them is that we need to teach our children to let God be in control so they can live their lives in spite of their struggles, in spite of their troubles, and in spite of their issues. Because there's always going to be, if we all have issues, it's not limited to once you get 18 and you're out of high school, everything's going to get better. Once you're out of college, everything's going to get better. Once you get a new job, everything's going to get better. Once you get married, everything's going to get better. Once you have kids, everything's... No, there's always going to be another issue, another hill, another wall, another struggle. And what we need to impress upon our kids is there's always going to be God who is sovereign over all, and who will be with us during all of those trials and tribulations. So here, let me sum up how this ends. Genesis 45, there was a time where Joseph's brothers did actually come and bow down before him, just like he said, just like God revealed to him, where they bowed down before him. And then he went through a series of not getting vengeance upon them, but really, as most theologians believe, it was him evaluating and testing, are these the same malicious, angry brothers who sold me into slavery? Or have they learned? Have they gotten better over time? And so eventually he reveals himself to them. He says, come closer to me. Joseph said to his brothers. They came closer. He said, I am Joseph, your brother whom you sold into Egypt, but don't feel badly. Don't blame yourselves for selling me. God was behind it. God sent me here ahead of you to save lives. There's been a famine in the land now for 2 years. The famine will continue for 5 more years. Neither plowing nor harvesting. And here's the key. God sent me on ahead to pave the way and make sure there was a remnant in the land. Wasn't just for Joseph's benefit, but to save your lives in an amazing act of deliverance. So you see, it wasn't you who sent me here, but God. He set me in place as a father to Pharaoh, put me in charge of his personal affairs, and made me ruler over all of Egypt. This is Joseph, who could have said, you know what, it sucks, I'm angry at you guys, had them thrown in prison, had them incarcerated, had them killed, and no one in the country would have said a word. They would have carried out Joseph's word. Yeah, you're in charge, let's do it. But instead, he said, hey, this is not a you thing, this is a God thing. And I've spoken to people who said, well, what kind of God would put a teenager in jail? What kind of God would allow a family to want to kill another family? And we've got to put this in perspective. From Joseph's perspective, God sent me here. From God's perspective, God responded to the anger and the frustration of the brothers, put it upon the heart of Reuben to say, hey, let's not kill him. Now, he could have left them in the cistern and they could have walked away and wolves could have ate them, but I believe, this is me, this is Floyd, that God just happened to send a band of travelers who were heading to Egypt. And so they said, hey, let's sell them to these guys. We'll get some money out of it. And God just happened to put him in the house of a just person. He could have been in the house of someone who did nothing but beat him to a pulp every day. Instead, he was in Potiphar's house, who put him in a position of esteem. And then it just so happened that there was Potiphar's wife, who happened to think he was good looking. Pray for all of us good looking men. But, thank you for laughing. But he could have been anywhere else, but God just happened to allow him to go into a prison where there just happened to be 2 other people who needed his help, one whom ended up getting out, who just happened to appear before Pharaoh. And Pharaoh just happened to have a dream. It wasn't that God said, I'm going to make these brothers hate him so that they can beat him up and throw him in a cistern. Anyone here play chess? Yeah, and for those of you who play chess, you know it's move, counter move, move, and sometimes to be really good, you have to be thinking several moves ahead and be prepared for whatever move your opponents make. And it's not that God is manipulating us, forcing us to make moves, but when we make a move, then God says, hey, I got to counter move that, and I have to counter move that. And this is the way that Paul puts it, if I can get the clicker to work. In Romans chapter 8:28, he says, we are assured, meaning we're not just hoping this is true or you know, maybe this is the way it works out. We are assured and know that God, being a partner in their labor, all things, not just the good things, not just the things that we want, but even the bad things, even the horrific things, even the tragic things, all things work together and are fitting into a plan for good to and for, and this is the key, those who love God and are called according to his design and purpose. God is on our side. And even when something happens that, even when, this is the cool thing, it's not just when something happens that we don't foresee, and then God's like, counter move. Let me step in and counter move with that. When things happen that we cause because we screw up and we make mistakes and we make bad choices, God is still on our side. So here, let me wrap this up with this. So Joseph, he had a dream, sold into slavery, he had issues. Your child, your teen, your young adult, they have dreams. I'm not saying that they're going to get kidnapped and sold into slavery, but horrible things happen in our world today. And they happen to our children. If you're a parent, you know your worst nightmare is anything happening to your child. And even when, and I tell my daughter this all the time, she's going to be 24. I said, when you're 24, 34, 44, and if I'm around when you're 50 and 64, you're still going to be my little girl. They're still going to be our children. And the worst thing is whether they're 4, 14, 24, 34, 44, 54, anything happening to your child. Tragic. You just can't bear it, no matter what age they are. Now, multiply that from God's perspective for every person on the planet who has ever lived. Even not just the ones who believe in him and who are called and love him, but even the ones who have rejected him and want nothing to do with him and want to spend their time and resources bad-mouthing him. Now, also, Joseph received God's love, and I don't know where all of your children are, but that's something that we need to impress upon our children, our youth, our young adults, and don't stop. Because just because they haven't believed it now doesn't mean that in a year, in a month, in a week, or next year, or 10 years, that they won't come and say, you know what? I need Jesus. We don't know what point in their life that they're going to, just like God doesn't give up on us at no point in our life. And we can't give up on our kids. Now, as the band comes up, 3 things I want to share with you quickly that we need. Again, no matter what age of life or what stage of life our kids are in, all of our kids, our youth, our young adults, they need you. They have enough friends, they need parents. Friends are going to come and go. Parents, we are tied to them no matter what. If they reject us for life, we are still their parents. If people reject God for life, he is still sovereign and still their God. And they need you even when they tell you they don't and they want nothing to do with you. They also need truth because our kids today are not going to experience truth. What they're going to experience, whether it be in college or high school, whatever, is whatever the culture says is truth for now. And that's going to change from day to day, from week to week, from generation to generation. So they need to hear the truth. I want to share something with you as we get ready to wind down. Christy Zahn is a pastor, and she, some of you know this, she shared this particular information. I hope you can read it. Her name is Mary Kendall. She said, many people do not realize that the Ivy League schools, all of them, not just one, not just some, all of them, were founded to be Christian universities. And she put, here's how far they have strayed in the founding documents of Harvard University. We find the following paragraph. When Harvard University was founded, this is what was in there. Hey, just like we have here, these are our beliefs. This is what we're hoping for. This is what they had. Let every student be plainly instructed and earnestly pressed to consider well. The main end of his life and studies is to know God and Jesus Christ, which is eternal life, from John 17:3, and therefore to lay Christ in the bottom as the only foundation of all sound knowledge and learning. And seeing the Lord only giveth wisdom, let everyone seriously set himself by prayer in secret to seek it of him, Proverbs 2:3. So Harvard University, when it was founded based on the fact that their goal was, hey, the foundation for all of the knowledge, all that you're going to learn, everything is Jesus Christ. And they're not the only ones. But you won't find any of those same Ivy League universities saying that their foundation of what they want to teach and educate your children is Jesus Christ today. And when your kids walk into high school and when they walk into college, they're going to be confronted with not with truth of this world, but the truth of whatever the culture says is acceptable at the time. So all of our kids, they need you, they need truth, and they desperately need Jesus. They need to know that he gave his life for them. They need to know that he died for them. They need to know that they can receive his love at any time. So as we close, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do something a little different, and it's great that there's only, a small amount of people here today. The band's going to sing this song, and if you want to sing along, sing along. But I'm going to ask each of you to come up by family, and I want to pray with you. And I'm going to tell you what I'm going to pray, because, if you're like me, you've pray for your kids and you're like, should I pray for their well-being? Should I pray for their safety? Do I pray for this? Do I pray for that? And over the course of time, someone shared with me, and I've adopted this and it works. I just pray that my kids fall madly in love with Jesus. Because if they fall madly in love with Jesus and they accept him, he's going to protect them more than I can. He's going to see that they have the resources that they need. He's going to see to their financial well-being, their spiritual well-being. So I want, if you're willing and you're able to come up by family, and I just want to pray with you that your kids, your young adults, your family, that they fall madly in love with Jesus. So I'm going to ask everyone to stand, and I'm just going to be over here, and if God puts it on your heart and you want to come up, and I want to pray with you. Otherwise, just join us in lifting up God through song. Just bow your heads for a minute. God, we lift up just all of these families. And we thank you that you've connected us and brought us together as your family. We lift up all of our children, all of our young adults, all of even our smaller ones who are not even in school yet. God, we know that there's so many struggles that they're going to face and we're going to face, and we can only equip them so much. And we just pray, God, that each and every one would fall madly in love with you, because we know that you're a God who will protect them. You're a God who will meet their needs. You are a God who will allow them to feel loved and be loved in ways that we can't even begin to imagine. So we lift up every family here, even the ones that weren't able to come forward. We lift them up to you. We ask that you would bless them mightily and open our eyes and our ears and our hearts to know that you are with us always. And we pray these things in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. And everyone said,